This is Mind the Gap, the podcast that explores the space between how we feel and how we act, between what happens and how we respond. In Season 1, we walked with the Stoics. In Season 2, we pivot toward emotional intelligentsia space, just as rich, just as demanding, and every bit as human. Here's Michael Comyn with the first episode of our new season, From Stoicism to Self-Awareness.
You could say this all began with a quote, a sentence I found while running a course on fear of flying, something I did for over a decade. People would come, intelligent people, deeply anxious about something that statistically wasn't that dangerous. And while researching how to ease that fear, I came across a line that stopped me in my tracks. It's not what happens to us, but how we perceive it. That line from a Stoic called Epictetus unlocked something. It shifted the focus from the external world to the internal response. It gave shape to what I would later understand as emotional regulation, though I didn't have that term at the time. It wasn't therapy, but it was relief. And that was the beginning of the Mind the Gap series. Season 1 took its cue from that idea. We travelled with the Stoics through anger, pride, aging, forgiveness, even regret. They taught us to control our reactions, to observe the mind, to anchor ourselves in principle rather than panic. But in working with people and listening to you, our listeners, I began to hear another need emerge. A need not just for calm, but for emotional clarity. A need not just for detachment, but for connection. The questions shifted. I lose my temper and I don't know why. I go quiet in meetings. I'm not sure if it's fear or fatigue. I don't think I'm depressed, but I don't feel anything either. These aren't questions Stoicism is silent on, but emotional intelligence speaks more directly to them. And that's why, for Season 2, we pivot. Not away from Stoicism, but towards emotional intelligence. Towards the inside world, the unspoken world, the one we often ignore until it bursts. Now, emotional intelligence, let's be clear, isn't just about being nice or staying calm. It has a solid foundation in science. It first appeared in the academic world in the early 1990s, thanks to Peter Salovey and John Meyer. They proposed something quietly radical. That understanding and managing emotion was its own form of intelligence, one that could be measured, strengthened, and most of all, taught. Daniel Goleman picked up on their research, and in 1995, his book Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, took the world by storm. Goleman brought the science into homes, schools, and boardrooms. Suddenly, we weren't just asking, am I clever? But do I know what I'm feeling? Can I handle it? Do I understand the emotional temperature of the room? These questions have never been more relevant. In a world of remote working, emoji communication, cultural shifts, and rising mental health challenges, our ability to understand and manage emotions is not a luxury, it's a survival skill. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a while to get comfortable with that. You see, I was raised on reason, trained in broadcasting, taught to control tone, hide nerves, smooth the message. For years, I wore a certain emotional uniform, professional, composed, and unshaken. But there's a difference between being calm and being cut off. When I finally began to study emotional intelligence in depth, I realized something uncomfortable. I was good at projecting confidence, but not always at noticing my own needs. I could help others name their emotions, but mine often came out sideways, through tiredness, tension, or overcommitment. And I know I'm not alone in that. Let me give you an example. I was coaching a senior executive, let's call her Aoife, bright, competent, sharp. But her team felt she was distant, cold even. When we dug into her emotional intelligence profile, we found high self-control, but low emotional expression. She learned early on to suppress her feelings to get things done. But that left her team guessing, second-guessing, and eventually disengaging. When we worked on naming emotions, not just suppressing or explaining them, she told me something I won't forget. She said, "I thought feeling nothing was strength. I didn't realize it was avoidance." And that's where emotional intelligence steps in. The formal model Goleman proposes includes 5 domains: self-awareness, knowing what you feel, when you feel it, and why; self-regulation, managing those emotions so they don't manage you; motivation, using emotion to fuel goals and purpose; empathy, recognizing emotions in others; and social skills, using awareness to build relationships. But theory only gets us so far. Let's try something. Right now, wherever you are, providing it's safe to do so, pause for 10 seconds. Take a breath and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Where is that feeling sitting in my body? What story am I telling myself about this moment? You might be feeling impatient, or peaceful, or a little unsure. And that's okay. The point isn't to fix the feeling, it's to notice it. Because emotional intelligence begins with noticing and builds from there. So this season on Mind the Gap, we'll be doing just that. We're looking at emotional literacy, what it means to go beyond fine, stressed, grand, into the specifics: lonely, disappointed, proud, unsure. We'll explore emotional boundaries, how to stay open without becoming overwhelmed. We'll talk about conflict, not as something to fear, but as something to understand. And we'll revisit the Stoics. They did a good job in season 1. They're still with us, because Marcus Aurelius reminds himself to return to reason, and Musonius Rufus insisted on lived virtue. Those are as relevant now as ever. But we'll balance that clarity with curiosity. We'll say, what else is there? What emotion is driving us? What do I need right now? In short, we'll build a kind of inner vocabulary that helps us show up better in boardrooms, breakups, parenting, grief, and joy. But, as Daniel Goleman said, in a very real sense, we have 2 minds, one that thinks and one that feels. And if those 2 minds aren't speaking, we're going to suffer. So here's my invitation as we begin season 2. Let's walk this road together towards better awareness, deeper connection, and wiser response. Because in the end, emotional intelligence isn't about being soft. It's about being honest, present, and available. And perhaps more importantly, human. Let's begin. And please mind the gap.
That was Mind the Gap, launching Season 2, Emotional Intelligence. Each week, we'll explore what it means to think and feel more clearly at work, at home, and within. Subscribe now and share the episode with someone navigating life's emotional weather. Because in the space between reaction and response lies everything that matters.